Howdy, folks. Hope everyone's doing well. We're coming back at you, George and Max, with another episode of our favorite daily project on this channel, because it's the only daily project on the channel. We're going through the entire MCU, leading up to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. It comes out on Friday. I mean, I know today's technically Saturday, but, you know, this Friday, next Friday, whatever you want to say. Welcome back to the Rewatch. We're watching Black Widow. Max, what do you think?
Look, Black Widow, I think, is a good film. I obviously enjoyed seeing Natasha Romanoff come back, Thunderbolt Ross come back. The introduction of Yelena was, I mean, probably the best part of the film. I think the one thing that probably would have served this film better is placing it somewhere different along the timeline.
The real world
or the release
timeline.
order. Yeah, the release order. And I say that just because of the emotional impact of losing Natasha in Endgame. And I think it probably would have raised the stakes a little bit more had the film been released prior to that. But, I get they had to pack a lot in before Endgame, so not a ton of space. But if I had my way, I probably would have released it before, just so that there's a little bit more to hang on to. But nevertheless, I think it was a solid project, really interesting. I'd love to talk about about Drakov in pretty significant detail as we go on, but those are my opening thoughts. Pretty good film.
Yeah, this one, you saw it in a movie theater. I've only seen it on Disney Plus. Yep. And I think with the spectacle, especially of that third act, I think it's one that I probably should have seen on the big screen. I'm disappointed that I didn't, but COVID being what it was at the time, I made that choice. But I enjoy this one. I've seen it a few times now, mainly just trying to see it as many times before premium access was lifted so I could get my money's worth. But, it's worth seeing multiple times. Scarlett Johansson is fantastic, as always. She's really been one of the consistent bright spots in all her appearances in the MCU. Yeah. And Black Widow is no exception to that. However, as you said, Max, the star of the film is Florence Pugh. Because Yelena is so just new to the experience of being a hero because she's been under Drakov's control for so long. But she's also, got that sibling chemistry with Natasha, and Florence has that with Scarlett in such a way that makes the character really shine and really stand out every time she's on the screen. She's funny. She's charming in her own weird sort of way. Florence Pugh does a flawless Russian accent, which who knew that was possible? And she kicks ass, which is the best part of this movie, is seeing Natasha and Yelena, and to a certain extent, Melina and Alexei kicking that ass. So yeah, this is a fun ride. I don't think, I agree with you that I agree that the release order probably screwed this movie over a little bit. It's set after Captain America Civil War, much like Black Panther was. It's before Infinity War and Endgame, obviously, since Natasha's there. I think that the character was well served. The character of Black Widow, of Natasha Romanoff, was well served by the movie that she got, her first solo film and probably only solo film. I just don't think that she was well served by the timing of the release, especially, you can talk about the Scarlett Johansson and Disney lawsuit for as long as it's been talked about over the last several months. But to have this be released when people aren't really going to movie theaters, that's not a cool move to do the split release and to have this character who people have seen in films at the time of release for 11 years not get the full premiere release in theaters treatment.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if it was another character that got introduced in phase 4 or, whatever, I think it would have made more sense to do the split release. But to your point, having a character like Natasha get essentially punted off to the side with the split release is just a little unfortunate. I mean, thankfully, it sounds like Scarlett Johansson and Disney and Marvel got all of their issues ironed out. I think she's actually coming back for another Disney project at some point. Not
As
MCU,
a
but
producer.
Yeah. So thankfully that seems to have fixed itself. But I think it's just too bad that a character like that got pushed off to the side. Obviously, unforeseen implications and a pandemic that nobody really saw coming, but could have been handled differently, I think.
And you talk about the character and then the story sort of being pushed off to the side.
Mm-hmm.
Natasha had been fully a secondary Avenger in Iron Man 2, the Avengers, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Age of Ultron. She and Clint Barton are referred to as the weak ones at the beginning of Avengers Age of Ultron. She's not one of the big Avengers, and Yelena even points that out, saying that I don't think a god from space needs an ibuprofen after a fight.
Yeah.
So my point to this whole long rant that I've done for the last 30 seconds is that the arc that Natasha has in the MCU has a turning point right around Captain America Civil War and Black Widow now, where she takes on more of that leadership role in the Avengers. You sort of see it at the end of Age of Ultron, where she and Steve Rogers are training the new recruits, but she really steps up in Civil War. Picking a side and all that is its own thing, but she becomes a leader, which we really see in Infinity War and Endgame. And I think this movie and leading this team of Yelena, Alexei, and Melina helps her in that regard to sort of step up in the Avengers and take on the responsibilities of being a leader of that group.
Yeah, and it's her family too. It's not some disparate group of people. It's people that she grew up with and learned to live with and work with. So I think that's also great. Quickly before we go into ratings and rankings, I do want to talk about Drakov. I think a lot of the criticism that stems from this movie focuses a lot on Taskmaster and how the big reveal that Taskmaster is not of comic origin, I believe, but is sort of a creative license from Marvel to make it Drakov's daughter. I think a lot of that criticism is unfounded, to be quite honest, because I think that Taskmaster was never supposed to be the villain. It was never supposed to be the bad guy. It was always Drakov. Drakov was always the elephant in the room, was always Natasha's white whale, and was always going to be the person, the bad guy in her story, because he didn't need to be some superpowered or super, alien or threat like that. He just needed to exist. And that's exactly what he did, was be a threatening presence without even really lifting a finger. He didn't really do anything physically. It was his mind. It was the way that he controlled these women. And I think that is a poignant message for our world today, right? And that a lot of times the scariest villain in someone's life, especially a woman's life, is not an alien or Thanos or some god. it's just a guy who has a power complex, and and feels like he can control women just because he can. And I think that's what is so important and impactful about this movie.
Yeah, really, really poignant stuff there, man. So yeah, let's get into ratings and rankings.
Sure. So this, I mean, this is a really good film. I enjoyed it, and it will be fun to watch as I go on and continue watching the MCU. So it'll reflect that, but I think it also gets pushed down just because there are better projects. But nevertheless, I'm gonna put it at 15 out of 32. So just in that upper half. I have a feeling it could rise up as I continue to think about it and watch more projects and everything. But I'll give it an 85. It's a very solid movie, and room for improvement, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, I am going to be right around where you are on this one. I enjoyed this one immensely. I think it's a really, really quality film that, once again, the character deserves a film of this quality, and I think she gets it. So I am going to go one tick higher than you and throw this 14th out of the 32 projects in the MCU. Again, just towards the bottom end of that top half. It's clearly a top half of the MCU production. The action is great. The characters are largely great. The story is well paced. It's edited well. Some CGI moments are a little hard to take, but you know, that's what you get in a Marvel Studios blockbuster. And then as for my 0 to 100 score, I'm going to go one tick higher than you again. I'm going to go 86 out of 100.
There you go.
There you go. So that does it for this episode of The Rewatch. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about the first animated project in the MCU. We're looking at What If. So be sure to stick around on the channel, and we'll see you tomorrow. Happy 100 videos to Flowficial Productions on YouTube.
Oh, there you go. That's a milestone for you.
Good night.
Good night.